Today's order paper.
Private Members Business, Private Members Bill. Consideration at report stage of Bill C-597, an act to amend the Holidays Act, Remembrance Day.
There being no motions at report stage, the House will now proceed without debate to the putting of the question on the motion to concur in the bill at report stage. Mr. Harris, Scarborough Southwest, seconded by Madame Michaud, moves that Bill C-597, an act to amend the Holidays Act, Remembrance Day, as amended, be concurred in at report stage. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Yes. Agreed? So ordered. Mr. Harris, Scarborough Southwest, seconded by Mrs. Michaud, moves that Bill C-597, an act to amend the Holidays Act, Remembrance Day, be now read a third time and do pass. Debate. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and how fitting that we should engage in a slight bit of time travel to end this Parliament. Of course, that brings me back to a quote from the Veterans Affairs Minister, Mr. Speaker, when he spoke in favour of this bill at second reading and said the specifics of this bill before this House are to correct a drafting oversight from the 1970s when the Holidays Act treated Remembrance Day slightly differently from the way it treated Victoria Day and Dominion Day, of course now Canada Day. I'm proud that it seems most members of this House will support the member for Scarborough Southwest in rectifying this oversight to ensure that as a federal holiday, Remembrance Day is treated in the same way as those other days that are important to our country.
Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank my colleague from Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier for seconding this motion and for their work on Deputy Critic for National Defence. And I'd also like to thank the member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue for their work and service with the armed forces here in Canada.
Of course, Remembrance Day has always been a very important day for my family, Mr. Speaker, and really the reason why I wanted to bring this bill forward to rectify that drafting error from the 1970s so that Remembrance Day would stand on an equal footing under the Holidays Act to Canada Day and Victoria Day, the other two legal holidays that we observe here in Canada. Now, yesterday I had a very touching moment and got to partake in a special ceremony at my father's elementary school, Donwood Park Public School in Scarborough. My father this year is retiring after 28 years as a teacher in Scarborough, and the last 25 of them at Donwood Park Public School. And during the services at the school yesterday, one of the other teachers, and his name is Shane Matheson, said that when he joined the teaching family at Donwood Park, he asked the principal and asked the other teachers, who was it that took care of the Remembrance Day ceremonies, because of course usually one teacher is designated, and all of the teachers immediately shouted out, well, that's Mr. Harris. Of course, I mean my father, David Harris, because he's taken care of the Remembrance Day ceremonies at the school for years and years and years. And so of course he went and had a talk with my father to find out how he could help to further improve the ceremonies. And it was very touching that they had actually gone and gotten a letter from our current Minister of Veterans Affairs to actually thank my father for the tremendous work that he's done over the years in teaching the next generation about the importance of Remembrance Day and its importance to us here in Canada. And that's particularly important work for communities that have a large number of new citizens, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the Veterans Affairs Minister did write that letter, and it was a very touching moment for us. Of course, as I've said in the House before, my family does have a long-standing military family tradition. My great-grandfather served in both World Wars. My grandmother was in the Canadian Women's Army Corps. My great-uncle Bill Riley was in the service in the Second World War and served in Europe, Mr. Speaker. And actually, last weekend, for the very first time, we were able to go and visit his tombstone in Pine Hill Cemetery in Scarborough, Mr. Speaker. and my father just happened upon the tombstone while he was there for services for a friend of his, a memorial service, and happened to walk by the tombstone. So that was certainly a very somber but a very important moment for our family. Now, Mr. Speaker, of course, this bill did go before committee. It went before two committees, in fact. It was there for 205 days before it was reported back to this House. We saw many of the witnesses multiple times, both in the Heritage Committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee, Mr. Speaker. There seemed to be some confusion being sowed about what the bill actually did. So let's clear that up now. And just as the Minister for Veterans Affairs said, this corrects a drafting error from the 1970s. What this does is it elevates Remembrance Day to the same status as the other holidays. This does not create a statutory holiday. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we in Parliament cannot impose holidays on the provinces. That is provincial jurisdiction. They get to decide which holidays to observe. And of course, every province does it a little bit differently. With respect to Remembrance Day in particular, 6 provinces and 3 territories treat it as a statutory holiday. We have in Manitoba, businesses have to be shut down till 1 p.m. so people have the chance to go and observe ceremonies. And in Nova Scotia, they have their own Remembrance Day Act. So there's lots of models to follow. And of course, Ontario and Quebec don't do anything special with respect to a Holidays Act or changing the normal course of business. But I'd actually like to quote my colleague from Cumberland, Colchester, Maquatabet Valley in Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, when he spoke. And he said, Dan, I want to thank you for bringing this legislation forward. I think it's a very interesting discussion. I'm from Nova Scotia. We have the Nova Scotia Remembrance Day Act. It means a day off school, businesses are closed. It's a really big event. It's become bigger over the years, and I think your legislation is timely considering the age of our World War II and Korean War veterans. I can remember as a child watching the World War I vets. All of them are gone now. My grandfather was in World War I. I have military history in my family that's very similar to yours. As a former elementary school principal, I can tell you that the local legions and the 19 cenotaph services in my riding are very active in the elementary schools, junior highs, and high schools, but particularly the elementary schools, and they embrace the legions and have a really strong partnership, Mr. Speaker. And, that's the critical important thing is that we have everybody that works towards honoring and remembering our veterans and the brave service and sacrifice that they've all made, that everybody works together so that we can continue to impart into future generations the importance of that sacrifice and that we never forget, Mr. Speaker. Regardless of what different provinces do and whether it's a day off school or not, that relationship between the kids and all the other groups that participate in Remembrance Day is what's going to help to keep the spirit of that day alive for us so that we can never forget, Mr. Speaker. So I'm certainly hoping that today we can actually end the 41st Parliament, because more than likely we're not going to be coming back here in September until the election, that we could actually end this Parliament on a high note. We all came together as a Parliament on November the 5th to vote on this bill, and it was in fact indeed fast-tracked through second reading. And it passed second reading with the vote of 258 to 2, Mr. Speaker. So we were all able to come together in November to move this bill forward. And I certainly hope that now, in the waning hours of this Parliament, that we'll be able to do so again, Mr. Speaker, and get this bill through third reading before we all rise for the summer. And of course, some of our colleagues and you yourself, Mr. Speaker, are not coming back. I'd like to thank you for the wonderful job you've done in that chair over the last 4 years that I've been here. I'm certainly certain you did a great job in your capacities previous to that, but I wasn't witness to it. And of course, I just want to thank all the people that make Parliament work on a day-to-day basis, the clerks, the folks at the table, the pages and the incredible work that they do, the constables and security services here that work to keep us safe every single day. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do on behalf of Canadians without all of them, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to say thanks to them before we rise for the summer. Now I'm going to cut my remarks short, Mr. Speaker, because I want to make sure that we do get to the other speakers and that we actually have a chance to wrap up this debate and move things forward. Now, of course, if we don't force a vote here today, then the bill will get through, and that's certainly what I'm hoping that my colleagues, in particular across the way, will all agree to, wrapping this debate up. And again, I just want to quote what the Veterans Affairs Minister said. The specifics of this bill before this House are to correct a drafting oversight from the 1970s. And then he further went on to say Bill C-597 would make it clear where the federal government stands with respect to the importance of Remembrance Day to our country. It would give provinces the opportunity to revisit whether they want to make it a statutory holiday as well without forcing them to do so, Mr. Speaker. That's what this bill does. It clarifies Remembrance Day within the Holidays Act by according it the same status as Canada Day and Victoria Day. Changes exactly one word by adding the word legal in front of Remembrance Day so that it matches what's said for Canada Day and Victoria Day. And I think it's a simple change that we can all get done today. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody and my colleagues and everybody who's been a part of this 41st Parliament. It's truly been an honor and a privilege of my life to sit here and to represent the constituents in Scarborough Southwest, where my family's lived for almost 90 years. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Ottawa Orleans.
Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest for presenting this bill, and maybe even commend the people of Scarborough Southwest for sending to this place a member who is so passionate about Veterans Affairs. But I have some questions, and I'll do them without preamble. The sponsor of the bill said that he would contact the provinces after second reading. So I'd like to know, what did the affected provinces, particularly Ontario and Quebec, where November 11th is not a statutory holiday, have to say about this bill? Second, what did the member hear from the Ontario school boards about this bill? My understanding is that school boards have been clear in saying that they want to keep students in school on November 11th. And third, has the member calculated how much it would cost small businesses to make November 11th a statutory holiday? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the bill doesn't create a statutory holiday, so there would be no cost with respect to that. Now, it is actually a little difficult to calculate the exact cost with respect to adding Remembrance Day per se as a statutory holiday. If we were to go and add another new holiday, something else, doesn't matter what it was, and it would impact the entire country, it's easy to measure that. This bill would, if Remembrance Day was made a statutory holiday, it wouldn't impact 6 provinces and 3 territories. It would slightly impact a couple of provinces, and it would impact 2 provinces. But again, it's also hard to find out what the cost is to those businesses right now when, and of course this happens on a regular basis, businesses I spoke to said, you know, it gets very confusing on Remembrance Day when you have an operation in Ontario and you have an operation in BC, and folks in BC are off for the day and the folks in Ontario aren't, and they go to call them to conduct business and can't get the business done, and that has a cost as well. Businesses want predictability, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes having uniformity across the country is actually helpful to business, and we just have to look to our neighbors to the south, the United States, for their example. Federal government passed a bill, and then every single one of the states across the United States passed their own bills, and now they have uniformity with respect to the observance of Remembrance Day, which they call Veterans Day. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is related to first-hand experience that I had in the province of Manitoba when there was a discussion in Manitoba to look at expanding it as opposed to a half day, that we have a full day in terms of statutory holiday. And the resistance, a lot of the resistance to moving towards a full day actually came from veterans, where they indicated that their concern was that they didn't want people to see it as strictly as a holiday and go off and enjoy yourself. They seem to be lobbying that what we should be doing is encouraging school activities. We should be encouraging programs. So it was ultimately decided that, look, let's stick with the half day. and it seems to be working Manitoba. It was something that was debated in the 90s, and I'm wondering if the member could just reflect if he can recall or has had any indication from veterans that ultimately believe a half day would suffice, because what they're more interested in is those moments of memory and opportunities to be able to educate the public as a whole.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the member for that question. Of course, the number one thing that I would seek to achieve with respect to Remembrance Day, Mr. Speaker, is that we have a situation here in Canada where every single Canadian that wants to go and pay their respects, however they want to do that, should have that opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And that's where, for instance, the model in Manitoba, where businesses are shut down for half the day, certainly in the vast majority of instances would allow that to happen. That's also why I have not been pushing specific suggestions with respect to what to do, because some of the provinces have done different things. Manitoba's gone one direction, Nova Scotia's gone another direction. 6 provinces and 3 territories have decided to make it a full statutory holiday. Now, when we were seeing witnesses in committee, Canadian Veterans Advocacy said something that was quite poignant, which is, of course, we are supposed to go and pay our respects and lay down our poppies, but afterwards we are supposed to carry on, Mr. Speaker, and continue to live our lives. And if families were to have that opportunity to spend the rest of the day together and choose to use it however they wish, I don't see a problem with that, because they're getting to spend time together, Mr. Speaker. But of course, it would also offer the opportunity for Canadian society to perhaps even do something for veterans and their families if we were to start organizing things. But that would be a much larger discussion and different debate that would be on a different bill at a different time. But I'm always happy to talk about Remembrance Day, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Ottawa-Orleans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And obviously, it's always a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to rise in this House and talk about the veterans' issues. But before I do, I'd like to pay tribute to you and the wisdom that you've shown in this House in chairing in the 40th and the 41st Parliament. I'll always remember fondly that I gave you your first tabs, and so you've worn them proudly, and this House is better for the service that you've given it, and thank you very much. Now, je tiens à remercier les membres.
I'd like to thank the members of the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs for working together to move this bill as expeditiously as possible. It's good to see everyone working together for Canada's veterans. While on the subject of this committee, I would like to take a moment to express how much I enjoyed chairing our meetings. No one can deny the earnestness of each and every person sitting at the committee table, and this is to the credit of its members. Thank you for your commitment to helping veterans.
When Parliament is dissolved, 2 members of this committee will be leaving to face new challenges. I wish the member for Edmonton Centre and the member for Guelph much success, and I thank them for their contribution to the high quality of the discussions of this committee. I thank them for their wisdom and for their passion. Now, Bill C-597 does not create a statutory holiday, as the member for Scarborough Southwest said. That is a day off work or out of school. Il convient de préciser.
For anybody who might be unclear on that point, it couldn't direct the provinces to let everyone out of school and out of work. That's because letting people out of school and out of work is provincial jurisdiction, not federal jurisdiction.
We heard over the past several months. We have learned there's a great divide over whether Remembrance Day should be a statutory holiday. Ce débat, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, that debate is for another time and place.
To where we are today, we had some great ideas come forward in how best Canadians can honour the fallen and our veterans. Dans l'ensemble, ce débat.
This has been on the whole, a very informative debate and has inspired a healthy conversation about remembrance. Thanks to the members of the committee for that, Mr. Speaker.
We've heard how commemorative ceremonies take place across Canada in all major cities and towns. Some of these are led at the grassroots level by young and old, by military and civilians, by various levels of government, by schools, churches, and private businesses. These events depend largely on the organizational culture and leadership, Mr. Speaker. Comme nous avons pu
As we heard from the witnesses, some groups broadcast the last post and réveil combined with a moment of silence over the internal PA.
To attend the local cenotaph ceremony. But anything more organized on a larger scale requires strong leadership. Certainly, with the Hire a Veteran Initiative and the Veterans Hiring Act, both of which were spearheaded by this government, we will begin to see more veterans in the workplace in the future. So perhaps that leadership will come from them, and it will only be a matter of a few short years before we see more organized commemorations activities in the workplace. As an aside, Mr. Speaker, I wonder how many in this room know about the Last Post ceremony in Ypres, Belgium. The Last Post Association ensures those who died in the First World War are remembered to this day in a simple ceremony that takes place every evening. À 20 heures,
At 8 o'clock, all traffic through the Mene Gate is halted, and two buglers move to the center of the street and sound the last post.
On July 9th, this simple 15-minute act of remembrance will be performed for the 30,000th time. Now that's leadership. That's dedication. Et ne serait-il pas merveilleux?
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could duplicate the last post ceremony in at least one Canadian community every night, like the citizens of Ypres?
I believe the present system in Canada is not perfect and could and should be improved, especially in the public school system. Just imagine how much more meaningful Remembrance Day would be with just a little leadership, imagination, and dialogue. Les outils existent.
The tools are there, Mr. Speaker. Veterans Affairs Canada creates some excellent learning materials for schools and education authorities.
Of animals of war in war and the Canada Remembers Times are great resources that do a good job of engaging students in remembrance. On the learning section of the department's website, schools can also find information on how to plan a successful remembrance ceremony. In reality, Mr. Speaker, there's no amount of commemoration that we can give to the fallen, our veterans, and our Canadian Armed Forces members to make up for their sacrifice. Depuis sa nomination,
The Minister of Veterans Affairs has worked extremely hard since his appointment to create a more respectful and veteran-centric environment.
some new measures this spring to help provide security and peace of mind in retirement. Nous avons élargi les critères.
We broadened eligibility criteria for a financial benefit called
Financial benefits for injured part-time reserve force veterans have been enhanced, and these men and women who have careers in the civilian world now receive the same minimum income support payment through something called earnings loss benefit. We also introduced the critical injury benefit, commonly known as CIB, which will provide a $70,000 tax-free payment to support the most severely injured and ill Canadian Armed Forces members and veterans. The Family Caregiver Relief Benefit will provide veterans who have a service-related injury with an annual tax-free grant to provide caregivers in the home with flexibility or relief while ensuring that the needs of the seriously injured veterans are met. As well, the process has begun to hire more than 100 case managers and locate them in key cities, key sites across the country. By increasing the number of case managers, we will be able to provide improved one-on-one service and better meet the individual needs of veterans. The government is working hard every day to provide the supports and necessary benefits so that Canada's veterans and their families have the right amount of assistance, income, and peace of mind. Les vétérans méritent.
Veterans deserve the highest respect we can give them. This conversation on how we can best honor the tremendous sacrifice made for our country over the years by countless individuals is certainly an important dialogue to have and to continue to have. In fact, it would be an honor for me to personally lead that conversation if given the opportunity.
Our nation's serving military and veterans are an inspiration to Canadians. Those that I meet at the friendliest legion of in the region, Branch 632 in Orleans, prove it to me every day. They inspire us to embrace freedom. Ils nous inspirent à nous
They inspire us to oppose oppression.
We will remember them. Nous nous souviendrons d'eux.
We will remember them.
Question et commentaire? No questions, sorry. Resuming debate, the honourable member from Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand that this will likely be my last opportunity to address the House. And suffice to say, Mr. Speaker, as members might be somewhat disappointed to hear that. But Mr. Speaker, if I could, just for a very brief moment, just to acknowledge what a privilege it is to be in the House of Commons and to be afforded the opportunity to be able to communicate a message to Ottawa on behalf of my constituents in which I represent, and what a privilege it is representing the constituency of Winnipeg North. Also, just to very briefly make a comment to the degree in which all of us as elected officials have a phenomenal support group that are there that enable us to do what it is that we do, whether it is our family, whether it is our friends, close friends in particular, but friends in general. And without those individuals, we would not be where we are today. To also acknowledge the incredible work that is done within our constituencies and the support staff that we have there, Mr. Speaker, again, which makes it so much easier for us to be able to do the things that are important to our constituents and to our parties, Mr. Speaker, and just acknowledging the phenomenal effort within, and I suspect all parties have it, but I'm going to be a bit biased here, just the phenomenal efforts and incredible talents that we have that make this possible, and I'm referring to the support staff, whether it's outside in the lobby to upstairs on the Hill, just individuals, and even individuals off the Hill, I must add, individuals that contribute so much in terms of being able to make sure that we are able to operate as a party inside and on the floor of the House of Commons and beyond, Mr. Speaker. And again, just to emphasize my gratitude and thanks to everyone from the people that do the recordings, to the Speaker of the House, to the individual support staff, whether they're of a security nature, and everyone else that, in essence, makes the House the best place, I would suggest to you, Mr. Speaker, in the world to be when it comes to just being able to participate in democracy. And I still do believe that Canada has the greatest democracy in the world. Always room for improvement, I must say, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, how appropriate it is that we're actually speaking on something that is of great importance to all Canadians. C-597 deals with remembering, Remembrance Day in particular, Mr. Speaker, and how important it is that we remember those that have lost their lives, have become maimed in significant ways, both physically and mentally, Mr. Speaker, in order to make sure that all Canadians have what it is that we have today. The rule of law, the freedoms that we have, Mr. Speaker. These are the things in which we should never forget. We have across this great nation monuments, we have murals, we have all forms of dedications and individuals that want to be able to express the fact that we will not forget and how much we love and appreciate those members of our modern-day force that are there to protect us, Mr. Speaker, and to be and the sacrifices that they make can never really be repaid. And that's one of the reasons why we aggressively pursue the issue of Veterans Affairs, so that when we saw closures of offices or when we look at the different government policies that affect our veterans, Mr. Speaker, that as a political entity and as a member of Parliament personally, that we want our vets and members of the regular force to know that the Liberal Party is in fact going to be there in a very real and tangible way. We do care about what's taking place in our Canadian forces today. We understand and appreciate the sacrifices that are made. Mr. Speaker, I have had the good fortune, and I'm not alone, the member from Montreal is also a member of was a member of the regular forces, and they were albeit short, just over 3 years. It was a wonderful experience that I had in terms of being able to serve in the forces. And I know firsthand that sense of pride that members of our Canadian forces have in what it is that they do. So whether it is throwing sandbags in Winnipeg during our great floods, to serving abroad, or to the world wars, we understand and appreciate the important role that our Canadian forces actually play, not only in the past and today, but also into the future, Mr. Speaker. So when we take a look at what it is that this particular piece of legislation is all about, well, Mr. Speaker, it is about Remembrance Day. The legislation, as it has been pointed out, cannot mandate a statutory holiday all across Canada. We can try to carry influence. There are many people that truly believe that it should be a statutory holiday from coast to coast to coast, Mr. Speaker. And there is a great argument for that to be made, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, I think it is important that we do respect provincial jurisdictions. As it's been pointed out in terms of Manitoba, has a half-day. And there was a consultation that was done in regards to that. There are some provinces that have a full day as a statutory holiday. Yet again, there are some provinces that do not have a statutory holiday. The Liberal Party has indicated its support of this particular bill. We want to see our provinces, as much as possible, deal with this issue in as fair and compassionate way, and to respond and to put into place what they believe their veterans and their citizens as a whole would like to see put in terms of their individual provinces, Mr. Speaker. But having said that, I can tell you there are many within the Liberal caucus that believe that it should be a full statutory holiday from coast to coast to coast. Others, Mr. Speaker, as myself included, would like to ensure that we have provinces play a stronger role in recognizing some of the the sacrifices, or I shouldn't even say that, Mr. Speaker, I should say more so the provinces to recognize the requests from many to look at full statutory holidays. But for now, I think that in looking at 597 or C-597, at the very least, what it does do is it heightens the importance of recognizing the significance of Remembrance Day, and to that degree, every member of the Liberal caucus is in full support. We voted for the bill in second reading, Mr. Speaker, and we were encouraged by the comments that we heard at the committee stage. We recognize that it is an important issue that ultimately would be nice to see resolved in a very positive way. But for me, personally, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we look at ways in which we can honor our vets. Our vets are an inspiration to us all and should be, Mr. Speaker, and there are certain things that we can do as individual members of Parliament, how we can approach local businesses, how we can encourage our local schools, how we can get involved in worship centers, Mr. Speaker, to encourage some form of activity, to participate in the laying of wreaths, to do things within our community to make sure that people understand how important it is that we do not forget. And if I can just close once again, as I started, Mr. Speaker, by thanking the good citizens of Winnipeg North in choosing to support me in 2011. What a wonderful privilege it has been to be able to represent Winnipeg North. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on Bill C-597 on this last day of the 41st Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this bill amends the Holidays Act to make Remembrance Day a legal holiday, and I think that's an important distinction. People who are watching this debate or listening to this debate might be a little confused with legal and statutory. It is not calling for a statutory holiday. A statutory holiday, of course, would be a holiday like Canada Day that would be celebrated, and also a day off right across the country. That's not what this bill is asking for. In fact, it's simply asking for a one-word change to Section 3 of the Holidays Act, and I'd like to read out that section with that change in it. It's Part 1 of Section 3. It reads, November 11th, or how it would read after this bill is passed. November 11th, being the day in the year 1918 on which the Great War was triumphantly concluded by an armistice, is a, and this is where the word comes in, legal holiday, and shall be kept and observed as such throughout Canada under the name of Remembrance Day. So it's simply the addition of one word. And again, I have to emphasize that we're not talking about a statutory holiday, we're talking about a legal holiday, and I will say a few more words about that in a moment. And so Remembrance Day is important, and I think this change is important. And there are 4 reasons why I think this change is important. Let me go through each of them, Mr. Speaker. The first is to commemorate and honor our fallen soldiers and veterans on a national level. Remembrance Day is celebrated and talked about in many different ways across the country. There really is no unanimity. And of course, as we know, every year the number of veterans from past wars is diminishing. And I think that it's time that we show our support on a national level. Veterans, modern and wartime veterans, are to be thanked for preserving the democracy that we live in and thrive in today. And I can only go with the experience in my own riding of Thunder Bay, Rainy River on what happens on Remembrance Day now. And it's interesting to note that with this change, with this one-word change, things would likely not change in Thunder Bay, Rainy River. Thunder Bay in 1970 became the city it is today from 2 separate cities. And my riding encompasses the south side of Thunder Bay, which is the old Fort William. And in the Fort William Gardens, on every Remembrance Day, without any exaggeration, there are 3,000 to 4,000 people in Fort William's Gardens. The complete ice service, which then is a cement service, is completely covered with veterans and presenters and wreath layers and honored guests and so on. And it is a wonderful celebration and remembrance of Remembrance Day and what that means to so many people in Thunder Bay. And on the other side of town in Port Arthur, in Thunder Bay Superior North, there's also a celebration of Remembrance Day that happens at exactly the same time. But what's interesting, Mr. Speaker, is what happens in the rest of my riding on that day. It's at Atikokan, which I attended last year. And I should say that I do have to sort of pick and choose each year and sort of rotate where I am at 11 o'clock on Remembrance Day. I was in Atikokan last year. A wonderful event put on by the Legion. And at Thunder Bay, I should also mention the Legions are terrific in terms of the day before Remembrance Day and the day of in terms of how they treat everyone who comes out to be part of Remembrance Day with them. And then in the far west of my riding, 11 o'clock, Fort Francis has their Remembrance Day ceremonies, and that's supported by the Legion and organized by the Legion. And then it's interesting as we go down the highway, Highway 11, to the end of my riding in Rainy River. They stagger the Remembrance Day ceremonies, and so there is an opportunity when I'm in the West End for Remembrance Day that I can actually get to Fort Francis, I can get to Emo, I can get to Stratton, I can get all the way to Rainy River without any problem and be part of Remembrance Day ceremonies. And what I do when I'm in Thunder Bay, I attend the 11 o'clock ceremony. That's the Eastern time. Don't forget, we gain an hour going to the West End of my riding because it's Central time. And then I hop in my car and I drive all the way to the other end of my riding, 500 kilometers, to be at the Legion Supper in Rainy River. And I know that many other MPs do the same sort of thing when they have large ridings. But the point of me talking about that, Mr. Speaker, is to emphasize that under this bill, what happens now in terms of school children attending, everybody making time to be part of these ceremonies, these various ceremonies right across my riding, will not really change under this bill because we're not talking about a statutory holiday, we're talking about a legal holiday. And a legal holiday would help to provide an equal opportunity, I think, for everyone in Canada to observe November 11th. And it's really, I suppose you could call it a symbolic change, Mr. Speaker, and hopefully would entice provinces that currently don't observe November 11th as a holiday to change their practice. Six provinces and all three territories already observe November 11th as a holiday. This bill, and I'll say one more time, does not force the rest of Canada to have a holiday, but it does give it a slightly different status by using the word legal, and I think it's an important distinction. Many people, constituents in my riding, young and old, all attend Remembrance Day ceremonies. It is a solemn time in my riding. You may or may not know that a number of a number of thousands of young men and young women have been involved in war efforts over the years, including most recently in Afghanistan. And there's a real understanding, I think, in Thunder Bay in particular, of the importance of Remembrance Day. And so while lots of people already do attend, I think this bill would go further to encourage all the provinces to give an opportunity for everyone to attend Remembrance Day ceremonies. And I think the last point, the fourth point, is that it's important to have an additional opportunity to educate the next generation. And I do want to say just something very briefly about Thunder Bay, Rainy River, and that the school boards right across my riding make a terrific effort to have veterans come into the schools. They enter the poster contests with the Legions and so on. There is not one school child in my riding who doesn't have an understanding and an appreciation of Remembrance Day and what that means. So the education of the next generation is already happening, and the next generation after that. And I suspect it's much the same right across the country in just about everybody's riding. And so a lot of things would not change with this bill, but it would increase its status somewhat. And I think that that's important. Let me just, I'm going to finish off, Mr. Speaker, with just a brief recap of this bill and bills like it, what the history has been in this House, because I hope that people will get the idea that it is high time that there was the support given to this bill that needs to be given. The NDP, I'll talk about the NDP first, has put forward similar bills in the past. Our MP from Hamilton Mountain in 2006 brought forward Bill C-363. She did the same in 2009, Bill C-287. And there have also been two motions in the past. Motion M-424, that was in the year 2000 by Nelson Rees, and motion M-27 by our member in 2006 by our member from Sackville Eastern Shore. It's also interesting that Conservatives in the past have brought forward similar bills. Inky Mark brought forward two bills, one in 2004, C-295, one in 2006, Bill C-354. And the Liberals, indeed, have also brought forward bills that are much the same in the past, two bills and a motion. Ronald McDonald, he was from Dartmouth, brought forward a motion M-699 in 1990, another one in 91, another one in 94, and Roger Galloway from Sarnia-Lambton brought forward motion M-298 in 2002. Mr. Speaker, given that history that I've ended my speech on, I can see no reason why we can't get unanimous support right through this House for this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable, resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to stand in the House on our last sitting day for this session and speak to C-59, an act to amend the Holidays Act, which was introduced by the member from Scarborough Southwest, and I want to congratulate him on his ability to certainly from a House perspective be able to get the bill this far through the House of Commons, and I know it's never easy. We've had, I believe, 40 private members' bills receive support from the House here during this term, and certainly getting to third reading is no small feat, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate him on that. The Holidays Act was created in 1970 to consolidate the Dominion Day Act, the Remembrance Day Act, and the Victoria Day Act. Although all 3 days were designated as holidays within that specific act, Mr. Speaker, Remembrance Day is not designated as a legal holiday. Initially known as Armistice Day, and still known by that name in Newfoundland and Labrador, Remembrance Day was created by King George V to commemorate the armistice that ended the First World War on Monday, November 11th, 1918, at 11 a.m. The first Armistice Day in Canada was observed in 1919 and is still observed every year as Remembrance Day, a day on which we remember the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country, so that when we may live in peace and freedom. For most of us, Remembrance Day is not only an occasion to remember those who have given their lives, and those who continue to fight for our country. It is a day to be grateful. Grateful for the sacrifices, the bravery, and the selflessness of our soldiers. grateful for the country we have today. Remembrance Day is an opportunity to give thanks to those who fought and still fight for our freedoms and our rights. We must never forget this. That is why our government has been working hard to provide veterans and their families with the care and support that they need. In fact, since forming government, we have invested over $5 billion in funding towards programs and services for Canada's veterans. Programs and services that provide veterans with the support they need, the support that they deserve. Our government will continue to leave no stone unturned as we continue to find innovative new ways to build on the supports available to veterans and to their families. Mr. Speaker, I would like to address Bill C-597 specifically. And Mr. Speaker, I believe there needs to be some clarification, as a member for Scarborough Southwest has been somewhat misleading Canadians on his bill. The purpose of the bill is to make November 11th a legal holiday. However, as my colleague opposite said on numerous occasions, and I quote, "I believe that it is time to make November 11th, Remembrance Day, a national statutory holiday." He said that himself on November the 3rd, 2014, and I listened to my colleague opposite with his speech just before, and he iterated on a number of occasions that the purpose of the bill was to get a legal, make Remembrance Day a legal holiday, not a statutory holiday. And I find it somewhat ironic that the reason the member from Thunder Bay, Rainy River, had to say that was, in fact, that the purpose of his rationale and building up of his argument in his speech is based on comments that were made by the very mover of the bill, not by anyone on any of the other parties in this House, certainly not, Mr. Speaker, by anyone that sat at committee after second reading vote and our hearings on the legislation. And, Mr. Speaker, currently on the member of Scarborough Southwest's own website, and I've mentioned this a number of times to both him at committee and here in the House, there is a statement which says, and I quote, "Having November 11th made into a statutory holiday will allow every Canadian an opportunity to attend their local Remembrance Day ceremonies and participate in this important day." Mr. Speaker, that was never taken down. We've had this conversation over a period of some many weeks, and it makes it clear that the member for Scarborough Southwest believes that his bill will, in fact, make Remembrance Day a statutory holiday. There are numerous problems with that statement, Mr. Speaker. First of all, witnesses heard at a standing committee on Veterans Affairs that it was very clear they do not support making November 11th a statutory holiday. In fact, during committee, Mr. Bradley K. White, who's the Dominion Secretary, Dominion Command, the Royal Canadian Legion, said, and I quote, "We remain concerned that if given the time off as a legal holiday, Canadians may not take the time to remember, that it may simply become a midweek break or just part of another long weekend." Mr. Bradley went on to also say, and I quote, "It is the Legion's position that November 11th not be a legal or statutory holiday." These testimonies make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that the Royal Canadian Legion does not support C-597 from the member of Scarborough Southwest. Furthermore, to back up Mr. Bradley's argument, Miss Sonia Gallo, who's a communications manager of the York Catholic District School Board, said during her testimony, and I quote, "The York Catholic District School Board does not endorse member of Scarborough Southwest private member's bill to make November 11th Remembrance Day a statutory holiday." Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite knows full well that even if C-597 would receive royal assent, it is up to the provinces to decide what days are statutory holidays. This means that his piece of legislation would have, in essence, no effect. This is important to note because, as stated above, the member has been misleading Canadians when he said on June the 15th, "This Friday, let us end the 41st Parliament on a high note and elevate Remembrance Day to the same status as Canada Day and Victoria Day by passing Bill C-597. Mr. Speaker, his bill would not give Remembrance Day the same status as Canada Day or Victoria Day. Should the bill pass and make Remembrance Day a legal holiday, it is the provinces that have the final word of what holiday is statutory or what is not. According to the Constitution Act, legislation relating to provincial non-working holidays is within the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. Therefore, the Remembrance Day to become a non-working holiday for all Canadians, legislation would have to be adopted by provincial legislatures, and most of them have already done this. Remembrance Day is currently a paid non-working holiday in all provinces and territories, except for the province of Ontario and the province of Quebec. At the federal level, Remembrance Day is a paid non-working holiday for public servants and those working in federally regulated institutions. This being said, whether Remembrance Day becomes a paid non-working holiday through the country or not, we must all remember its significance. We must remember the reason why the day was created in the first place. We must continue to honor it, to be proud of our veterans, of our history, and the wonderful country in which we live. We are thankful to those who were and still willing to fight for it. We must continue to educate our youth, the future generations, about the importance of our military history and its place within this world. We must teach them to recognize and appreciate the breadth of the sacrifices of the men and women who put their lives on the line for us, whether they did that previously, Mr. Speaker, or whether they do that today, and whether they do that in the future on behalf of this country, lest we forget.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Multiculturalism.
Thank you, Chair. And as we come to one of the last speakers at the 41st session, I must say that I extend my thanks to the staff and I hope for my colleagues on the other side, for those that are coming back and those who are leaving, Godspeed. Mr. Speaker, I is a proud piper of the tradition that on every Remembrance Day I attended the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 66 and to perform the ceremony for the Gordon Highlanders. I think it is a tradition that I carry on for about 10 years since I started to learn to pipe, and I must say that it is quite an honor to be part of that Remembrance Day. But today, Mr. Speaker, I'm honored here to speak today to talk about Bill C-597, an act to amend the Holidays Act Remembrance Day. Bill C-597, which seeks to designate Remembrance Day a legal holiday, was introduced by the member of Scarborough Southwest. Its intent is not only to raise the profile of the day and to ensure it receives the same federal recognition as Canada Day and Victoria Day, but also to make Remembrance Day a paid non-working holiday. November 11th is a day to remember the men and women of Canada's armed forces. They have made great sacrifices for our country and our freedom. They have also sacrificed for the rights and freedom of others who are part of our global community, but who have not been as fortunate as those of us who call Canada our home. On this day, we remember those who have died fighting for us. We remember the sacrifice being made by those who are still with us. We remember the military families who live in uncertain, never sure whether their loved ones fighting abroad will return home or be present for milestone occasions such as graduations or the birth of a child. Remembrance Day has a long history in Canada. In 1919, King George V proclaimed November 11th as Armistice Day. He declared there may be, for the brief space of 2 minutes, a complete suspension of all of our normal activities. During that time, except in rare cases where this may be impractical, all work, all sound, and all locomotion should cease, so that in perfect stillness the thoughts of everyone may be concentrated on reverent remembrance of the glorious dead. In Canada, at precisely 1100 hours, local time, businesses, factories, schools, office, and traffic come to a halt for 2 minutes of silence. We have observed this day, now called Remembrance Day, ever since the end of World War I. In 1970, the Holiday Act was passed to consolidate the Dominion Day Act, the Remembrance Day Act, and the Victoria Day Act. While Canada Day and Victoria Day are called legal holidays, the Holiday Act does not use this language Remembrance Day. With the intent of the bill in mind, it is important to note that the word legal before holiday has no effect on whether the holiday is a paid non-working holiday. A legal holiday and a holiday have exactly the same status. We all respect the constitutional authority of the provincial and territorial governments to choose whether or not their residents have a day off from work and school on Remembrance Day. November 11th is a paid holiday for employees under the federal jurisdiction, including those who work in banks or the federal public service. However, it is up to the province and territorial government to decide whether it will be a paid holiday for workers under their jurisdiction. One reason for making Remembrance Day a paid non-working day is to give it an equal status with Victoria Day and Canada Day. Another reason.
Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest is rising on point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much. On this point of order, it seems as though all parties have been supporting this bill all along the way and congratulating me for this work. But for some reason, the Conservatives seem to want to talk out the clock today instead of getting this bill over to the Senate for study and adoption. So here's the last chance. Therefore, I would seek unanimous consent for the following motion, that notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House, Bill
Order. Does the honourable member have unanimous consent to put this question forward? He does not. The honourable parliamentary secretary for multiculturalism. 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just say that in the last moment I said, currently in provinces and territories, Remembrance Day is a non-paid working holiday. Many schools organize commemorative events to teach and to increase students' knowledge of the importance of this day. School hold assemblies and invite veterans to speak. The activities at school ensures that students learn about our veterans and the role our students play and continue to play in Canada.
Order. Unfortunately, the time provided for the consideration of private members' business has now expired, and the order is dropped to the bottom of the order precedence on the order paper. It being 1:20, pursuant to an order made earlier today, this House stands adjourned until Monday, September 21st, 2015 at 11 a.m., pursuant to Standing Orders 28.2 and 24.1.